The regular dual meet season is over, but let's recap what happened in the most epic matches of the past year. So let's stop stalling and start talking wrestling. Hello everybody, my name is Josiah, and if this is your first time here, welcome to Fanco Wrestling. This channel is all about wrestling news, tips, and lifestyle, so make sure you subscribe if you're interested in that type of content. Today we're talking all about the most epic matches of the past dual meet season, and this is because we're just getting into the conference championships and NCAA postseason. I thought it'd be fun to recap what exactly happened this past year. So what I'm going to do in this abbreviated show is just discuss what my top matches are and what I think you guys will actually think were the top matches of the past season. But make sure you drop a comment below so I know what your favorite match was of the past season. First, let me get into a couple of honorable mentions. So I'm not going to dive too deep into these matches, but I thought they were pretty epic for multiple different reasons. The first match I want to talk about is Stefan Micic versus Sebastian Rivera. And the reason that this was such a big match is mostly because it was a super match. So you had the number one guy at 125 pounds bumping up to wrestle the number one guy at 133 pounds in Stefan Micic of Michigan. Now, Rivera of Northwestern, he is a guy who beat Spencer Lee this past season, which, you know, I'll get to that match in a bit, but, you know, it was a pretty awesome match. You know, Micic ended up controlling the match, so he was pretty dominant there. But it was a pretty exciting, you know, something for the sport. When you're looking back on super matches from last year, like Bryce Meredith versus Seth Gross, this is one that sticks out and is, you know, it's just exciting for the sport. Something else, another match that I want to get into is DeSanto versus Suriano. So I believe that this is an honorable mention. Of course, DeSanto won 6-4. During that match, and this really put him on the map for this season as somebody to watch. You know, he's had a couple other solid wins, but this put him on the map. This was during the Rutgers versus Iowa duel, of course. And now what was interesting about this is Suriano was actually up 3-0. He had a takedown, you know, going into the match, but he ended up getting in the third period three stalling calls, I guess, giving up 2 points. And this was, you know, unfortunate for him because he ended up losing a couple points, and DeSanto ended up getting a takedown and he won the match. So this was another honorable mention. Another honorable mention is 133 pounds again. You know, 133 pounds has just been so exciting this entire year. So of course I have a couple matches that I have to talk about here. Now I will say that I try to broaden my horizons and add different matches from every single weight. So there's a good variety here in my top matches of the year. But talking about 133 pounds, Dayton Fix versus Nick Suriano. Of course, at the time when they wrestled during the Oklahoma State versus Rutgers duel, this match was pretty hyped up because these two, the last time they wrestled was in high school, and it was the recorded longest high school match of all time. And this match was just about the same in high school, considering all the horrible calls and challenges that were during this match. It was absolutely absurd. But what happened is Fix ended up winning the match by a score of 3-2, defeating Nick Suriano. Dayton Fix at the time was number 6 in the country, and you know, they both had a pair of escapes, and then that's kind of when the craziness went down with the match. Suriano got a locked hands call, it was overturned. Then John Smith challenged another locked hands, didn't get it, and then what ended up happening is Fix won in sudden victory because Suriano got a hands to the face call, which I still hate that rule. What do you guys think about this rule this season? Is it going to affect anybody during the national tournament? I think it's a horrible rule and it needs to be thrown out next season. And the last honorable mention that I have is at 141 pounds, which is a fairly recent match in Joey McKenna versus Yanni Diakomihalis. So Yanni won this match this past week, and he won by a score of 7-5. This was pretty exciting because it's the number 1 guy in Yanni of Cornell versus the number 3 guy in Joey McKenna from Ohio State. This was pretty exciting because these are two guys who both like to scramble. They're both, you know, they're both solid wrestlers. And what happened is there were a couple major scrambles, but Yanni he pretty much controlled the match in the takedowns that he got. McKenna did get a pretty nice reversal on the edge of the mat in the third period, but at the end of the day, Yanni won the match, and their next meeting won't be until national tournament. So now let's get into the top matches of this past year. All those matches I mentioned were great, but these matches I think were even better. These matches had me out of my chair, off the couch, yelling, screaming. I was excited. I was fist pumping, and a couple times throwing up the ones because I was so excited for these guys to win. As a fan of the sport of wrestling, it was exciting to watch. I really loved it. And again, let me know what your favorite match of the year was. First match I want to talk about, and I'm going to go in weight class order, starting at 125 pounds, going down to heavyweight. I have about 6 or 7 matches that I want to talk about as the best of the year. At 125 pounds is Sebastian Rivera versus Spencer Lee. This was exciting because of the history of these guys. The deficit that Spencer Lee beat Rivera by in the past couple of seasons it's had guys worried that what happened to Spencer Lee. And of course, after his most recent loss, his getting pinned by Nick Piccininni of Oklahoma State, Spencer Lee got pinned by him. It was a little disheartening to fans. But this was the first big match where Spencer Lee got beat. The Russian is cut, just like from Rocky. So this match was at Midlands in this past December, and of course Rivera, who was number 2 at the time, ended up beating Spencer Lee by a score of 7-3. Lee in the past has beat Rivera pretty handily, major decisions, and he has beat him pretty handily and at NCAAs and as well as Midlands before, but these two will meet again at the Big Tens, assuming that they both win out, or if they're on the same side of the bracket. But assuming that they both win out into the finals, these two will meet again at Big Tens and possibly again at Nationals. And I'm excited to see what happens here. The next match is another one at 125 pounds. Another one that involves Spencer Lee is, of course, the Oklahoma State versus Iowa duel when Nick Piccininni pinned Spencer Lee. He shot in on Lee after an escape, and Lee with his split, he's so flexible, but it actually bit him in the butt this time whenever Piccininni was able to reach around, cradle him up, lock it up, and run it over and pin him, and the crowd went wild. It was an incredible match. The last time Spencer Lee was pinned was 10 years ago in a Pennsylvania junior wrestling tournament. So this is exciting. But what's even more exciting about these past 2 matches, I'm a huge Spencer Lee fan, and I actually would like him to win nationals. I'm rooting for him. I'm also a big fan of Pitch, but Spencer Lee, I've been a fan of his from the very beginning, and I think these 2 losses will put some fire under him, and he will want that title more than ever. After winning as a freshman, he has a possibility to become a 4-time national champ, which is a rare achievement. Only 4 guys have done it. I think this will put some fire under Spencer Lee, and he's out there to win another title. Next up at 133 pounds, and I only have one I had 2 in the honorable mentions, but I have one more 133 pound match, and this was between Mickey Philippi and Dayton Fix. Now at the time, Dayton Fix of Oklahoma State was number 2 in the country, and Philippi was number 4. Philippi, of course, coming from the University of Pittsburgh. Now this match ended up in a decision with Mickey Philippi winning 3-1. This, again, it's something that increases the stakes at the national tournament now. It's something that, makes me look forward to whether these guys meet again or whether Philippi defeats another top-ranked wrestler. Philippi is a freshman, of course Fix is too, which makes the match even more exciting that we get this awesome of a match. But what happened during this Pitt versus Oklahoma State duel in January, Philippi shot in for a single at the end of the 3rd period, got the takedown, and ended up winning the match. He rode he rode Fix out at the end of the third and won by a score of 3-1. Their next meeting won't be until the national tournament. They're in separate conferences. Of course, Oklahoma State is in the Big 12 and Pitt is in the ACC, so they won't meet again until nationals. Next up on the list is 141 pounds. Nick Lee versus Joey McKenna. This was during the Penn State versus Ohio State duel, and I was there. What an atmosphere. I wish I could have gone to that duel with Oklahoma State versus Iowa last weekend, but, I'm happy with the, one of the probably second best match of the year in Penn State versus Ohio State. And this was one of the marquee matches of the night. Now, nobody necessarily expected Nick Lee to win. At the time, he was number 6 in the country, and Joey McKenna was number 2. He had a pretty incredible record, and Nick Lee came out there and beat him. This was after Roman Bravo Young went out and beat Luke Pletcher, which made the duel even more exciting because both of those matches were big upsets. So what happened is, this was actually even a revenge match for Nick Lee, who McKenna beat last year during the season. Now, McKenna was up actually pretty big. He was up 5-2 going into the the third period. He was up 5-2 with a pair of takedowns. He was looking like the controlling wrestler. But then, kind of what happened, and part of what happened during that match, McKenna could have been out there to score team points, which is understandable after Pletcher lost at the previous weight. So he was out there to score, possibly get some bonus points. Well, he got gassed. He got gassed in the third period, and it was clearly visible that Nick Lee ended up coming out, getting a few extra takedowns. He got 2 takedowns in the third period to win the match by a score of 7-6. What a great match. And the better part is that these two will meet once or twice again. Of course, during the Big Ten tournament, these two guys could meet. If they both, win out, maybe make it to the finals, that could be an awesome championship. And then if they could meet again at the national tournament. Now, of course, they both have Yanni in the way of a national title, who Yanni's the returning national champion at 141 pounds. And who do you think will win between those three? Yanni just beat McKenna, but Nick Lee and Yanni have yet to wrestle this season, so I'm kind of interested to see what happens there. 149 pounds, we had Ashnault versus Kolodzik. Now, Kolodzik, who actually just suffered a loss last week to an unranked guy from Drexel, was the number 1 guy in the country at 149 pounds. Now, this is a weight that's been a little bit more open this year, considering Zane Rutherford is out of the weight class. But number 2, Ashnault of Rutgers, wrestling against Kolodzik of Princeton. And this was during the regular season duel. And Ashnault came out with a win, and not just a win, but a major decision. He made a statement during this match. Now, Ashnault, he got backs off of Kolodzik right at the second period. Whenever Kolodzik went out to a sitting position, I don't even know what the move was. He just kind of threw him to his back, got some back points, which was awesome. He got a takedown in the second, and Ashnault, he also had a double to an ankle on the edge of the mat, which was, and with even a push on Kolodzik, with the refs had to break up a little bit. There's some bad blood there, that these guys are out there to beat each other up. Now, Ashnault, like I said, Ashnault's of Rutgers, Kolodzik of Princeton. So their next meeting won't be until the national tournament, because Princeton's in the EIWA, so they're in separate conferences. But if these two meet in the national finals, who will win this time? Will Ashnault still be as dominant, even though he's not wrestling in the rack at Rutgers? Next up on my list is at 165 pounds, Alex Marinelli of Iowa versus Evan Wick. Now, these guys are number 2 and number 3 at 165 pounds. Of course, Vincenzo Joseph holds the first place rank and will probably be seated number 1 at nationals, depending how the Big Ten tournament turns out in the upcoming weeks. But Number 2 versus number 3. What a match at 165 pounds. This was during the Iowa versus Wisconsin duel, and this went to sudden victory with Marinelli winning with a takedown in overtime. Now, this is actually their second meeting of the season. They met at Midlands earlier in the year, and Marinelli actually won that meeting as well. Now, Marinelli came out, got a takedown right in the first period, but then Wick rode out Marinelli in the second period. He's a tough guy on top, and Marinelli couldn't escape. What happened then in the third, Wick got a takedown right away, and Marinelli ended up getting out. Scores tied up, and goes to sudden victory, and Marinelli, of course, ends up getting the takedown. And like I said, these two guys could meet again at the Big Ten tournament. Wick from Wisconsin, Marinelli from Iowa, and Vincenzo Joseph of Penn State. These three could meet at the Big Ten tournament. Who wins between those three? Let me know below. And at 174 pounds, one of my favorite wrestlers is Mark Hall from Penn State, and then Zahid Valencia of Arizona State. I was very upset I wasn't able to go to this match because I was out of town during that weekend, but what a match between Mark Hall and Zahid Valencia. This is their third official meeting, fourth off the record. They actually met at an all-star duel at the beginning of last season. Zahid won, and then of course Zahid beat Mark Hall in the national finals last year. But Mark Hall did beat Zahid in the national tournament his freshman year, and he beat him in this duel. He beat him pretty handily, 4-0. He shut Zahid Valencia out. Now, Hall got a pretty nice takedown on Zahid, and it went into a nice scramble with these two guys, as it usually does. These guys are both technical wrestlers. They're not just giving up takedowns right away. I mean, I remember watching the Ohio State match with Mark Hall. He was taken down essentially, and he still had a whizzer, and somehow managed to get his way out of that and reverse the guy around. It wasn't a reversal because the Ohio State guy didn't have two, but ended up getting the takedown off it. And these two guys, all that stuff's happening in their matches. Now, Mark Hall won 4-0 because he rode Valencia out in the third period. And that was big for Mark Hall, to be able to ride out the reigning national champion. Of course, these guys have a title each, and they're fighting it out for that title again. Now, who throws a little wrench in the mix is Daniel Lewis of Missouri, who just pinned Zahid Valencia, and I'm interested in seeing where that goes, because that's going to be a heck of a match. Now, these guys won't meet again until the national tournament because they're in separate conferences. At 197 pounds, one of my favorite matches of the year. It was my favorite pin of the year up until Nick Piccininni pinned Lee. My favorite pin of the year besides that, of course, is Bo Nickal, another one of my favorite wrestlers, when he pinned Colin Moore in the Ohio State match. This was huge because Bo made a statement again. He's bumping up this year, and some people were worried. I wouldn't say too worried because it is Bo, and Bo knows wrestling, but he ended up pinning Colin Moore, and not just pinning him in the first period in 1 minute and 38 seconds. And that was huge for the duel. Now, of course, Penn State was up at that point against Ohio State, but it really, really secured that win, getting 6 points for the team. And that was huge for Bo. Now, these two will meet again, potentially at the Big Ten tournament. Penn State versus Ohio State, both Big Ten teams, and then they could meet again at the national tournament. And Bo, I wonder if he'll pin Moore again, or if Moore will turn it around. And the last big match that I have is 285 pounds. Derek White, who is number 3 in the country, versus Gable Steveson. And Steveson, he made a statement during this match. Steveson, a true freshman out of Minnesota, he beat Derek White by a score of 8-2. He took White down right away. Of course, White is a tough guy from Oklahoma State. He took White down right away, turned right to his back. He was up big in the first period. He was up 6-zip. Ended up, that was probably the most exciting moment of that match. The rest of it was good, but that takedown right away, taking White straight to his back, was big. Stevenson he's looking to become a true freshman national champ. Right now, he's undefeated. He's about 30-0 on the season, which is a huge record. One of the only other guys I know that has a record with that many wins is Nick Piccininni. A lot of these other guys like Bo Nickal and Jason Nolf, they may be around that 23, 24-0 range, which is still phenomenal. I mean, you're an undefeated wrestler at the collegiate level. But Gable Stevenson, about 30 solid wins this year, and that's going to be big going into the national tournament. Now, these two, they won't meet again until nationals because Minnesota's in the Big 10, Oklahoma State in the Big 12, but what will happen the next time they meet? And what are your favorite matches of this past season? Did I miss any? Please let me know in the comments below, and make sure you check out all these other videos on college wrestling news and everything going on in the Big 10 conference, as well as every other conference this upcoming week. I'm thinking about live streaming the Big 10 championships right on YouTube, just having a little hangout right here. Please let me know if you're interested in that, and I'll consider doing it. Thanks for watching.